Are you ready to know what you don't know about social media? Well, then you're in the right place. This is the Seb Rust Show on Social Buzz on Air. Social Media Radio. Bring you tips, tricks, tools, and extreme value. Broadcasting from our studio in Miami. And now, here's your host, Sebastian Rust.
What's happening, party people? Hey, welcome back to the show. Maybe welcome to the show because it's your first time. Either way, I sure do appreciate you taking time out of your day to hang out with me for just a few minutes. Now, I'm excited about every guest I have on my show, but I'm extra excited about this episode because it has to do with my beloved Miami Heat. My guest on this episode is Michael Baiamonte. He's made his mark here in the South Florida market as not only a premier voice for Florida sports, but also event hosting as well. He's been with the Miami Heat since 1990 as the public address voice announcer for our beloved three-time world champion Miami Heat. Friends, could you please give a warm welcome to Michael B. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael B is in the house.
Sebastian, how are you? It is wonderful to be in the house.
What's up, dude?
I tell you what, everything is just fantastic. It was great to hear from you and to have the invitation to come on with you. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. I believe that your introduction that I just gave you was very underwhelming, so I may have to redo it down the road here in the show.
You know, it's funny because usually the tables are turned. I'm the one who is entrusted with the big booming introduction of people. And so a lot of times when people want to bring me on, they're not sure what to do because what do we do? How do we introduce Michael B., who is the guy who does the introductions?
I was trying to think of it yesterday, and I heard it when on one of your past episodes when you had M. on. But what is your main? What is the main opener? What's the main line? It's get on your. I don't even want to try it.
And now. Stand up and make some noise for your Miami Heat.
That's it right there. The $1 million pipes, ladies and gentlemen. The championship, multiple rings voice of the Miami Heat. So how did this all happen? You said you were in the corporate world at one point in time. And then join the Heat organization. Let's back up and help our listeners really better understand exactly how you became the greatest voice in sports broadcasting.
Well, it does go back quite a while, Sebastian. I was in corporate America, as you're aware. I was also at the time announcing college basketball. I was the voice of the FIU Panthers, the Florida International University Panthers.
Oh, we're real familiar with them, especially if you're a Hurricane fan. That's familiar
right.
with them.
Just recently upset the University of Miami football team for a phenomenal, biggest victory in school history. But I was a student there. I was announcing the games. I graduated, and I stayed on as the announcer. I was working in corporate America by day, and at night I was announcing men's basketball for the FIU Panthers. And the Miami Heat comes to town. They are invented. In 1988. So franchise starts in Miami, and I put in my resume and tell them, hey, listen, I'm an announcer in town. I announce basketball. I'd love to have the job. I get a letter back. Thank you so much for your interest. We have someone. Don't call us. We'll call you.
Welcome
but
to
I get turned down. Totally turned down. And I continue to do college basketball. Not sure what's going to happen in the pro game, but a friend of mine who I graduated from college with, who has since gone on to become the Spanish radio voice of the Miami Heat, a gentleman by the name of Jose Pineda. We graduated from FIU together, and he at the time was in sales with the Miami Heat. They had not yet moved to Spanish broadcasting. But the fact that I mentioned that is because he was keeping my name in the proper people's ears. Always dropping my name. Hey, I got a guy. He's really good. One day I'm at my office in corporate America. The phone rings, and on the other end, the person says, this is so-and-so with the Miami Heat. Our announcer is sick. Can you announce the game tonight? So the first thing I think is, which one of my buddies is playing a joke on me here and trying to get me all worked up? But when I vetted him out and figured out that it was the truth, I said, sure, I can do the game. went down and announced the game. It was against a team that is not even in existence anymore, the Seattle Supersonics. They have gone on now to become the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yes.
And so I announced that game. Everything goes fine. I get a phone call the next morning, said, "Thank you so much. Can you possibly be our full-time backup?" I agreed to that, did a few preseason games for the team the following year. And then at the end of that season, their current PA guy left the organization. He had a family business in San Diego he had to go take care of. And so I get a call back and said, "We'd like you to re-audition for the job," which I did. And I got the job, and that was 29 years ago, Sebastian.
Wow, Mike. Holy cow. So you were with the Heat when the Heat weren't cool.
Yeah, we've been through the highs and the lows. Yes, you're right.
The
You're
Ronnie
absolutely-
Cycli, Glenn Rice, and all those
Yes,
guys were great in my eyes. But I totally remember that. In fact, funny story, my friend Kendra Hoback's brother won the contest for naming Bernie.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, his name is
Wow,
yeah.
that's going back 33 years.
Yeah, it is. His name is JR. And I've ran into him at the gym probably 5 years ago, but I'll never forget that story. He goes, "Yeah, I won the contest for naming Bernie."
Oh, wow. What a great story.
Well, my sister had come to UM in 1991, I think. No, 1992. She was her freshman year at UM, and we followed her down here, moved down here with my mom, but we were in Orlando prior to that, and she had a boss that had season tickets to the Orlando Magic. And I'll never forget, it was row AA, BB, and then it started A, B, C. His seats were seats 1, 2, 3, and 4 in row BB. So we're talking right behind the visitors' bench. So all the Jordan games and all the back in the day. So I grew up an Orlando Magic fan. Well, then you move to Miami. It's kind of tough, when you're not in your city to really, especially because it's only 4 hours away. But I had fell in love with, professional basketball. Was never any good at playing it. But I always remember that announcer, because he really had, and you've probably heard it multiple times over the years. I mean, he were the guy that was the original one. I don't know who he is now, but
it's the same guy. It's a gentleman by the name of Paul Porter.
Paul
Porter. And Paul does a great job, and they embellish a lot of Paul's work with sound effects and so forth when he's announcing the game. It makes for a great show.
Yeah, he really holds that O real long. I'll never forget that. So when I came and I started to learn about you and hear from it, I thought, wow. I'm like, it's not just in Orlando that there's some real voice hype and excitement around the team, and it's really such an important element. In fact, I was at the inaugural game, the first ever game for the Orlando Magic, back in November in 1989, I think it was. So I remember the old Miami Arena, where you'd take the Metro Rail down to the Overtown stop, and it was literally right across the street there. So
yep, that's right. That was a great venue. I mean, the fans were so close to the court, and that building would get so loud. I'm sure you were there for some of those games. It was just a wonderful place to play basketball.
Well, the Heat really started, then this whole, LeBron thing came about. When he decided to take his talents to South Beach, and that must have just changed the dynamic and element. I mean, I know the organization grew exponentially and made some huge changes and added a DJ to the mix, and of course Dale and all these other additional things. How did things change for you after being with the organization for so long, when a superstar like LeBron came to town, and then we got D Wade, and then you got the Three Kings? And what was that like after such a long, I don't want to say all those years of not being a championship team, but I don't think that had we won any championships prior to that?
We did. In 2006, we won with Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal,
yep,
Alonzo Mourning. So yeah, that year we did win. And then in 2010, the Heat sign Chris Bosh and do the sign and trade for LeBron James. And then you've got what they've called the Big Three era here in South Florida. And I've got an interesting take on it, Sebastian, that your listeners might be a little surprised about. I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. It was a glorious 4 years from 2010 to 2014. we were the epicenter of the basketball universe on the planet Earth. And that is something that not a lot of people experience. But I will say, being under the microscope as much as we were was extremely, extremely stressful, more than people might understand. We had so many eyes and ears on us every single night, no matter if it was a bad opponent on a Tuesday or a potential finals opponent on a Friday or Saturday or a national television game. Any little misstep, any little misword that may have come out of my mouth was going to be magnified over and over and over again. So that's why I say it was very stressful, because while as a professional, I want to put on the best show I can every single night, I've got that added stress on top of me. Hey, I want to do a great job. Just be super careful. And so
Right.
that's why I say it was extremely stressful. Having said that, would I like that again? Having lived it, yeah, I'd probably go back to it again.
Yeah, it really was an exciting time. It was it almost felt surreal at times, that you thought your hometown team is really the epicenter of professional basketball. So LeBron ends up leaving town, and D Wade got back to the spotlight, which was great. And last year was just a phenomenal exit. I think he really orchestrated that entire, one last dance. Just it was really a thank you to the city. Even though he moved to LA, it was a big thank you to the city here. So, how have things changed since that era of 2014, and have things started to settle back into the role of a normal I don't want to use the word normal, but your typical professional basketball organization?
Yeah, the team for the most part is very, very similar to how it was constituted last season. Obviously, with the loss of Dwayne Wade, that's a huge loss, one you'll never replace, maybe in the history of the franchise. But I don't want to say in his place, but as a new addition, is a player that the team added by the name of Jimmy Butler.
Oh
Your
yeah,
listeners may know Jimmy started in Chicago, then had a stint in Minnesota and Philadelphia before coming to Miami. The thing with Jimmy Butler is he seems to be a player who has really adopted what we call this heat culture. This hard-nosed, tough guy, play defense, team comes first. The same kind of attitude that was embodied by Dwayne Wade. And as a matter of fact, Wade has gone on record and said he had told his friend Jimmy Butler about how he felt the organization would fit him perfectly. So finally, things aligned, and Jimmy Butler comes on the team, and he really has put this team on his back and brought them together in this heat culture. And the fans are embracing this. Now, not for 1 minute have they forgotten Dwayne Wade and what he has done for our organization and our city. But the fans are really liking what they see with this organization now. They're playing hard. They're winning games. They're in second place in the East right now. So they've gotten off to a great start. There's some
absolutely.
electricity coming back into the arena.
Yeah, there really is. I noticed that too, and I've been, I watched from. Well, it's only been probably a dozen games so far, but it seems to be that we're off to a great start and with strong. And I not knowing anything about Jimmy Butler other than knowing about him and knowing he's played for other leagues and seems to be a good fit for our organization. It's really refreshing to hear that he has really adapted into this Miami Heat culture. And really been able to say, hey, listen, I'm here to lead, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And if we lead, the proper leadership and teamwork's in place, you win, you win games.
That's exactly right. And that's what's happening. That's exactly what's happening.
So our mutual friend, the one and only Mr. DJ M. who was your most recent guest on your brand new podcast that we're going to chat about here in a couple minutes, is my childhood best friend, and to this day we're still it's like my brother. And he once told me you came up in conversation, and he said, did you know that guy doesn't talk for the entire day when it's game day? And he goes, imagine you trying to pull that off, Sebastian. I'm like, no. No. So was that a true story?
That is a true story, Sebastian. If I have it, like last night was a game night, I've got my calendar free. I've got nothing happening. I stay away from any other work. Also, try to avoid kind of doing any studio work whenever I have a game, so that my voice is in the best shape it can be when I get into that arena. So I'm happy to be able to talk to you. And spoiler alert to your listeners, we don't play. The Heat doesn't play tonight.
I was like, well, I wouldn't think so. But yeah, I totally get it. I do a ton of MC and host work, and usually these are corporate events, so they last 2 or 3 or 4 days. I got one in Dallas next week for 4 days, and it really is just like a Broadway performer or any singer or anybody utilizing their voice. I mean, it is an organ and a tool that we utilize that we can, in fact, wear out. And it requires maintenance. It really does. I find myself doing maybe I should start doing Instagram videos of my voice exercises and warm-ups, because they're quite comical. But it really, really helps. I find that if I wake, and then the downside I've seen is that, I on stage all day talking, and then after the event's over, people want to talk and chat. And usually if it's in a happy hour or bar environment, there's music and you tend to have to talk louder. So I found myself saying no to me. I'm like a one drink max, post event, knowing I've got to be back on stage the next morning, because I'd wake up the next morning and be like, my goodness, I was in bed by 10 o'clock, but yeah, I was talking for 3 hours straight above the music type deal. And it really does strain your voice. So it makes complete sense how staying silent all day to preserve your voice is so vital, because once it's gone, as you know, it's not the easiest thing to get back. And so that leads me to my next question. So what have you ever missed a game?
I have, as I let you know, I've been with the organization for 29 years.
Wow.
I have missed 9 games in those 29 years.
Wow.
And
who fills in for you?
Well, over those 29 years, my backup has changed from time to time. So we try to always have a quality backup on hand. And I will say, and sometimes it leads to other things, but we had a great backup recently set, and congratulations to him. He just took a gig with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, wow.
So we're kind of in transition right now, but we have someone in mind that we're going to bring in to talk to about the position. But, listen, you don't have to be the guy in the front seat to necessarily get an opportunity at another gig. Here, this guy was my backup, and winds up getting the top line gig with the Globetrotters, and will be traveling the world doing the PA work for them.
Wow. Well, you go ahead and put my name in the hat there, Mike. I am readily available. I've done no PA work per se, but I love microphones, and I love just tell me what to say, right?
Oh, perfect. We'll put a script in front of you and tell you, Sebastian, go.
Yeah, don't worry about the play-by-play or knowing anything about basketball. Let's just let them go. So, well, it's been fun to watch I guess I rejoined the organization back in 2005?
Yes, that sounds about right. Yep.
And that was huge for his career, as we all know. It was that really kicked open some large doors, but also, like Em had mentioned on your episode, this paved the way for professional sports teams to say, hey, maybe we do need some in-game entertainment to be able to engage with the fans, just in addition to the game. But then we throw in the mix, I guess it was probably I don't know what year Dale joined, but Dale has a very interesting story too, where he really showed up and was kind of like, hey, look at me. Just let me try it. I'm telling you, I got an idea. I think this could work. And it actually ended up sticking. And he's been with the organization for quite some time now. I just think it's really neat to see how the Heat organization was really open to saying, hey, let's add these additional elements into the Miami Heat game experience on here. And I think it's just all around. I always say, the Heat games are more of a social experience than an actual professional. I think it's probably a good mix of both. But my goodness, we got a nightclub underneath the arena, don't we?
That's right, we do. And you use the exact word that is part of our culture. When I say our, I'm talking about the game day folks, the people like Irie and MDOT and Dale and myself. We call it the Miami Heat experience. So when fans come to a game, they are going to experience something that I don't think they have had in other stadiums or other arenas. We have so much talent in that building. The people I work with, I am so fortunate. They are so good at what they do. At times I feel like I'm nothing more than just the ringleader, kind of telling the fans where to look, what to listen for. Here's what's coming up, and then these talented people take it from there and make the experience happen.
Yeah, it is. It is. If you haven't been to a Miami Heat game, if you're listening and you're not from Miami, if you come to town, make sure you get to a Miami Heat game. It is definitely quite the experience on here. So what's you just got done launching this this podcast, which is it just seemed like an absolute natural next step for your brand and what you were doing. You and I were chatting about it a little bit before we started the interview here. It's called Dos Minutos. For our listeners that may not know who you are or be familiar with that, let's talk about how the podcast came about and how you came up with the name. And of course, one of your famous taglines when there's 2 minutes left in a quarter is Dos Minutos in the way that only Michael B can deliver Dos Minutos. When you first announced it, I thought, wow, what a perfect name, what a perfect natural next step on here. But let's help people better understand how this thing came about.
So I had been doing my thing, and as we mentioned earlier, I was in corporate America before I joined the Miami Heat. Well, I had a couple of guys that I used to work with, and again, we're talking many, many years ago, came to me recently over the summer and said, "Hey, we want to do something collaboratively with you, Michael B." It was guys that I had worked with in the past. We had done some different things, some talent type shows together. And so I said, sure. What's your idea? They said, we want to do a podcast. I said, okay. What do you guys want to talk about? I said, well, let's talk about things we like, things that are interesting to us. We've got a number of friends and fans that follow not only me as the voice of the Miami Heat, but also them as their time in corporate America with all their former coworkers. And so we said, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. And so the first thing, as you mentioned, is, all right, what are we going to call it? And so I thought, well, maybe we'll use one of my signature phrases. And the most popular one that's out there today, and I gave you one earlier, to stand up and make some noise, but there's one I think now that's trumped that, is a little bit more popular. It's the 2 minutes, dos minutos. And to give your listeners a little backstory on how that happened, South Florida, we know, is made up of a large number of Hispanic and Latin-based constituencies. And so is the fan base of the Miami Heat. I mean, it matches Miami-Dade County perfectly. And so we were in a production meeting one day, and someone had the idea, hey, can we inject some Spanish into Michael B's announcing of the game? And so we talked about it a little bit and talked about how we could make that work and make it something that the Latin community would embrace, but the American community could understand as well. So you're not really trying to push anybody away. You're trying to just bring everybody together. So I thought about it for a while, and I said, okay, guys, I think it's going to have to do with numbers. We're going to have to find some way in the game to interject some Spanish with numbers. I said, and the main numbers in basketball are 1, 2, and 3. That's good, because everybody, whether you speak Spanish or not, everybody knows uno, dos, tres. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So I start thinking about, how am I going to incorporate that? Well, one of the rules in the NBA is at 2 minutes of every quarter, I am required to announce that over the PA system, because the rules of the game change in the last 2 minutes of every quarter. So I'm actually saying it to alert the teams, the players, and the officials that we are in the last 2 minutes of the quarter, and so the rules have changed. So I'm thinking to myself, well, this makes sense, because I have to say 2 minutes. What if I say 2 minutes and then repeat it in Spanish?
Brilliant.
Everybody knows dos, minutes, minutos. I mean, it sounds almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
So if you don't speak a lick of Spanish, you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
And if you do, you're saying, hey, he just said that in Spanish. That's pretty cool. So that's where 2 minutes, dos minutos was invented. But Sebastian, I'll take it one step further, where it has now become iconic. My production manager says to me in the same meeting, I've got a better idea. You're going to say 2 minutes. You're going to say the word dos, and we are going to condition the fans to scream out minutos back to you. And I said, well, that sounds like a great idea, but how in the world are we going to get 19,000 people to know that they are supposed to scream minutos after I say dos? He says, just leave that up to me. So that first season, we made signs that said minutos. And our hype group, who we call the Hoop Troop, they're in various sections of the American Airlines arena with these minutos signs. And they're prepping the section. Hey, he's going to say dos. I'm going to raise up this sign, and you're going to scream minutos. We did that religiously for the entire season. And it is caught on. This is going back over a decade now, Sebastian. It has caught on so much in the South Florida community that I am confident you could go to any public place in South Florida and scream out the word dos, and somebody is going to yell back to you, minutos. So we figured, why not take that as the name of the podcast? And so the 2 minutes, dos minutos podcast was born.
I love it. And you've done how many episodes so far?
Well, we're up to 9 episodes now. We've got a number of interviews, which are really, really neat, including our very good friend, DJ M. who is the touring DJ for none other than Jamie Foxx, a guy who was inspired and mentored by 2 world-renowned DJs, and DJ Irie and DJ Khaled.
Yep.
And he tells his stories in only his way and style. And it's that episode is a really nice episode. And Sebastian, I thank you for listening to it.
For sure.
If your listeners get a chance, take a listen to it. Mixing Music and Megastars with DJ M. is the name of the episode.
And he's my best friend, so you better listen to that episode. You hear me, listeners? I can't believe here we are 30. We talk about it all the time. Like, we're both fathers. My daughter just went to college. He just had his kid.
Yeah.
We're chasing the dream. And here we are 30 years later, just a bunch of kids that used to stroll the streets of Kendall.
That's where the best friends are made. And you can see it here now, all these years later. Here we are. And now I've recently joined this friendship, I guess, of the last decade, but I'm happy to be a part of it.
He's good people. I love that kid. So I got grand plans of one day. I've got to introduce you and you've got to introduce me. And I don't know what that looks like. I got the idea for this next bit here based on the M. interview, because obviously you can't have the voice of the Miami Heat on your podcast without doing a little like improv action, right? So I usually have the voice of God done as I take the stage by the sound booth. I don't know if you've ever had that done before, but 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to go that well. In fact, my reel, I'll have to
bad. I mean, just say it like it is. It's going to be bad.
It was. And I'll never forget my MC reel to this day is, and it's my buddy Don, who worked with the production company of a gig I did in San Diego for a few years called the Traffic and Conversion Summit. And he actually has a great voice. So he goes, no problem. I'll do your VOG. Not a problem. I go, okay, all I need you to say is, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your MC for this event, Sebastian Russ. And he totally mangled MC is what it sounded like. MC. And so I went to the back after he got done with that, and I said, Don, you want to work on your big words tomorrow on here? So needless to say, he completely mangled it. So I'd be curious to hear what it would look like if you were tasked with the task of I'm looking for another word here, of bringing me up to the stage, because for some reason or another, you're VOG and I'm the MC of the gig. So what does that look like?
And now, please welcome to the stage your MC for the event, Sebastian Russ.
Cue the DJM music. That was fantastic. I still think that for every Heat game, you should be introduced. So if that was the case, I don't know that'll ever happen, right? That would be like, Mike, can't you do your own job here? But in the event that would happen, and someone was crazy enough to give me a microphone before the Heat game started, it would probably sound something like this. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the PA announcement microphone, the voice of the Miami Heat, Michael B. How's that?
Very nice.
All right, good.
Very nice.
So
I like because we're not doing the dueling bombastic voices there. I like that.
What is that radio personality? Tom Likas out in LA used to call that voice debating.
Great word. That's a great word.
Well, my dad was in radio for 30 years. So I grew up in he'd go out and sell the ads and go back to the station and literally, cut the ads, like literally Scotch tape with the reels back in the day.
Oh,
and I'd be on there on weekends cutting tracks for anything that could be, the ad would sound good with a little kid saying the actual ad. So I grew up with headphones on my head and in the studio, didn't really have a passion for radio. And here we are 30 years later, and I found, my passion is definitely what I always like to say. If there's a microphone or a stage or a camera anywhere in sight, I am all over it. And as you know, most people don't have that mentality. People's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is dying. I don't really understand how those two work.
I'm not interested too much in the second one, but the first one I'm all in for.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. Well, Mike, man, it's been great to catch up. We were trying to figure out where we had initially met. It's been a few years. I know we've been connected on Facebook for quite some time here, but it's just great to be, I consider you a peer, even though your job is way cooler than mine. But it's fun to be able to just say, hey, listen, I got a podcast. I'd love to have you on my podcast to talk about your podcast. I mean, it's just the times and day and times that we are living in.
And listen, I appreciate you having me on and giving me an opportunity to let your listeners know about the 2 Minutes Dos Minutos podcast. You can find it anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and I hope you'll take a listen. And Sebastian, again, thank you so much.
No, it's been my absolute pleasure, Mike. I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon here. I got to come by and check out that studio.
Oh, absolutely. The Zeus Tech Studios. Come by and see us. We'd love to have you come by.
Excellent. I will definitely do that. Hey, friends, thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Seb Rush Show on Social Buzz on Air. I hope you had some fun learning more about the voice of our beloved Miami Heat. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to this show. This way you'll get nifty updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please do share this with people you share content with and leave us a review. 4 stars is obviously preferred. I'm Sebastian Rusk signing off from the Seb Rush Show studios. We'll talk to you next time.